Father Keating, I wanted to make sure you had a chance to either respond to His Holiness's words about fear, or I had a question for you.
Well, I'll take a question from you.
It seems to me that the success of this secular ethics all depends on the core orientation of human nature being good. That's what I think I read in the book. Do you believe that we are basically, as humans, good, or are we basically evil?
Well, my opinion is certainly consistent with Scripture, which says that God made everything good, including very good when He got to human beings. So this is a big question, that how did we get into all this trouble with our emotions when we were born right or correctly? And I guess the story of Adam and Eve, however you understand it, is a kind of story of human nature in which we were challenged to the temptation that the devil is allegedly described as offering. I must say it was a brilliant temptation that he offered Adam and Eve. He said, if eat this tree, God is just jealous of you. Eat the fruit and you'll become like God too. In other words, this is the temptation for unlimited power, unlimited glory, unlimited selfishness, unlimited domination. And this is the what we mean by pride that has really no end. So what God... But there was a deep kernel of truth there that we shouldn't lose, that God actually invites everybody into becoming God too, but on His own terms, which are the only terms that could possibly work. And humans want to become God on their own terms. They don't have an understanding of what true happiness is. And I personally think that without some practice of reducing our selfishness in some way through service of others, but especially by exposing ourselves to the deeper level of human nature, which is post-personal, you might say, the level of the true self, a level that is probably God's very presence within us, which is the ultimate self, you might say. And that is what we were created to be. How we got in this position, through a fall or something else. But science is offering us another choice today that I think is serious, and that is, it's not that we're guilty of failing God necessarily. That's one expression, but that should be respected. It's very deep in the tradition. But science suggests that we're just unevolved. We have animal ancestors, and those instincts are still present in us through the brain. You have to have that kind of brain to live in this world. But when the human brain began to expand, the third brain or the cortex, then you had a thinking animal. Still, animal is the main issue. It thinks. So in that, what seems to be the case is that we're evolving from our animal ancestors, that's pretty certain, without knowing at what point we became from humanids to real human beings. And that explains a little why, when we're in trouble, we regress to certain aspects of our former animal ancestors, like in situations of conflict. We think in terms of violence. this is just regression. That's what we did when we were animals. Now we're trying to integrate those animal instincts to be able to live in this world with all its difficulties and emotional stimulation in a way that is forgiving or loving or compassionate or cooperating. In other words, the human way of responding hasn't been established in society as yet. And hence, this may be another way of discussing how the humans, who are good, have so much trouble maintaining it. And certainly as we started out in childhood, we had no idea of who God was. So we had no way of, I use the term God just as a label, as Brother David so well made that distinction. So the child has to have, as I understand it from psychology, correct me if I'm wrong, it has to have enough security, enough love, and enough independence or allowance to experiment in order to live, in order to go on living. And because it doesn't have any reason yet, it interprets the things that bring it gratification of those instinctual needs in such a way as to think that that is happiness. And so it seeks the satisfaction of its emotional needs, thinking that this will bring it happiness, and it brings gratification, which is brief, but happiness is something that perdures, and it's this life not only of human happiness, but of divine happiness that God, at least in the Christian perspective, is trying to give or invite us to share. It's really God is trying to make us equal to himself or herself or itself, whatever. There's no pronoun you can really give to God.
Before we end, and we certainly would give His Holiness the last word, my question would be to all three of you, what about the human condition gives you the greatest confidence in this secular approach, as defined by His Holiness, to universal ethics? What about our human condition gives you the most confidence, Brother David?
Well, I like the idea that Father Thomas just now expressed, that what we call the evil in the world and all the life-denying reality that we see all around us, and that is in many ways so threatening, is the not yet good. It's the not yet good. We are evolving, we are developing. And what gives me the most hope then is that we do not have to oppose it, because opposition just multiplies the problems. But we can look at it with the eyes of a mother who also finds in their children often all sorts of traits and behavior that are anything but praiseworthy and are pretty destructive. And the mother looks at them and with eyes, without having to say anything, with eyes that say, you can do better. And that creates a space into which the children can grow, into which they can grow up. And so we can look at the world with eyes of a mother, and we can say, you can do better. And that is very different from opposing evil.
That's beautiful.
Amen.
Well, we're all saying bravo to that, and it's only love that brings people fully alive. And if children can see that between its parents and their reaction to them. This is a window onto what goodness is in the way that humans were intended to be corrected. But I just wanted to add to what you said so well. We can attribute our faults, if you're sensitive or have guilty conscience and so on, to the fall of Adam and Eve. That's been taught for centuries. But I don't think we have to anymore think of that. There's another way of looking at it. Instead of saying this person is not living up to or is committing a sin, let us say, you might say, in line with your own compassionate view, this person, like me, is not too evolved yet. So what we're waiting for is for all of us to grow up enough to be able to really live together as human beings with the capacity of sacrificing our own desires enough to really bring compassion into the world. I don't think you can do it without some modifications of our programs for happiness that are selfish.
But then, of course, there is so much to be grateful for that when we look at the positive, we will be so busy that we will have very little time to look at the negative. And there is now there is nowadays a wave of gratefulness. That word gratefulness and gratitude pops up everywhere. It is a new way of being mindful. It's a mindfulness that is interactive, because it is the gratefulness for the other. It's the interactive form of mindfulness. And our website, you mentioned, Reverend Liz mentioned our website, www.gratefulness.org. We have started this a decade ago, and we have now every day about 10,000 people coming from between 80 and 100 countries to this website, and it's just booming. There is this hunger for gratitude. I think it's a hunger for mindfulness that expresses itself interactively, because there could be misunderstandings even of mindfulness, but this interactive mindfulness, that we call gratefulness. And that wave of gratefulness that is arising in our time also gives me great hope.
Excellent. Your Holiness?
아직까지 나온단 모란 치워드리잖아. 투슈 계획 hir부 가르도스. 나는 데 세큘러 에틱스 졸업 유니버설 직접 그때 용해게 용투사를 삼선 지다 투슈 계획다 데 hir부 가르세기 유나서.
I believe 7 billion human beings, no one wants suffering. No one wants trouble, problem. At the same time, a lot of problems, essentially, our own creation. So, basically, do not want problem. But, meantime, a lot of problem created by ourselves. Then the question is ignorance. The emotion become too strong, intelligence less active, or holistic sort of
perspective.
Holistic sort of perspective less. So there, if we emphasize education, awareness, as I mentioned earlier, intelligence, as the objectively study, then I think these destructive emotion not only destroy, not only create some problem others, but also them themselves. While strong anger comes, while strong fear or strong attachment develop, you lose sleep, you lose appetites, right? Appetites. So you suffer. And then there are some scientists say constant fear, constant anger is actually eating our immune system. So then, more awareness, these things through information, through education, then I think we can reduce that ignorance. That ignorance, actually, ignorance without sort of connection with the religious sort of thing, simply do not know the long-term consequences if you let this destructive emotion without control. Then consequences, eventually, you will suffer, you have to face. Therefore, this ultimate source of problem is your own destructive emotion. So once we develop more awareness that here, through education, then I think intensity of this negative emotion will reduce. That's my view.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Then, of course, to my brothers, and also sister, I think believe Creator. So therefore, the Creator, God, as a full of compassion, there's no reason, no factor to create evil human beings already.
Truly evil.
No, I think his son, his creation, naturally, some similar, some part of God's own sort of
Nature.
Nature, good thing. That must be there. Then all these negative things are, again, I think, our own ultimately out of ignorance. You see, these things happen. So basic nature of human being is positive. This is my view.
Yes.
And from the Buddhist viewpoint also, troubles, ultimate source of trouble is ignorance. Ignorance always have the opposite. That's the understanding. So therefore, ignorance never remains permanently because of the opposite there. So the question is whether we make attempt to develop the awareness which opposing ignorance. So that's the question. Otherwise, no matter how sort of serious ignorance, always possible to remove.
Thank you.
In many mystic literatures of the world, there's a profound experience referred to as to tremble in awe. As the expression suggests, it is not to tremble in fear, but in love and awe. Despite the 23 years with my beloved teacher, in this lifetime alone, this body still trembles in awe. And this speech experiences heightened states of vibrations. I beg your pardon as I continue. Beyond religion echoes a genuine aspiration towards a secular society built on the foundations of harmony of all religious, spiritual, and philosophical traditions of the world. It is not a shallow sentiment of religious pluralism and its tolerance, but that which grows out of sincere respect for humanity and for our ecosystem. We are only what we perceive and reflect in the global context. We constantly project our beliefs and behaviors to the society at large. Bless you. We must develop a capacity to both reflect on the worst and the best that we have to offer. The magnitude of events like these proves that interdependence works. We could not have put it together without the helping hands and spirits of many. We would like to thank, first and foremost, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, to put it simply, for everything. His Holiness's presence, inspiration, and tireless effort to bring humankind to actualize its enlightened potential are unprecedented. I'm grateful to the wonderful James Taylor for an inspiring opening. Thank you, sir, for your enthusiasm. Heartfelt gratitude to my beloved spiritual friend and mentor, Father Thomas Keating, who agreed to descend from the mountains of Snowmass, Colorado, to participate in this. The Buddhists speak of many gradations of spiritual silence. He embodies them all. His voice is that of the early desert fathers, and his body, even if it disagrees, is at least a few hundred years old. My gratitude to Brother David Steindl-Rast, whom I had only met in the realm of voice until now. Thank you for all that you do and for reminding this world to be grateful and in a perpetual state of wonderment. My sincere thanks to the wonderful Reverend Liz Walker, whose mere presence catalyzed this all. My dear Geshe Thupten Jimpala, for the tireless service of his body, speech, and mind to become a medium to His Holiness. Someday, I would love to write an algorithm to replicate the uniqueness of Lotsavas, or great translators and interpreters. A future project for my students in artificial intelligence. Heartfelt gratitude to our virtuous friends for making all this financially and materially possible. To members of the private office based in Dharamshala for their sincerity and devotion to what they do. Office of Tibet in New York for coordinating all the efforts. Members of the State Department and DSS, Boston and Cambridge Police, and private security personnel for protecting and serving one of the most beloved leaders of the world and the people who admire him. My sincerest appreciation to the wonderful staff of Marriott Copley, especially Kathleen and Mark. Ulko Visser for bringing European precision and pliancy to this organizational logistics. To the wonderful team of staff and volunteers, Linda Krause, Melita Podesta, Scott Kennedy, Zara Hushman, and Tinsley Gallion, I want to make you aware that 100% of center funds, since its inception in 2009, goes to program. The center at MIT consists of unpaid volunteer staff. Many thanks to my sounding board at the Dalai Lama Center at MIT, its board of directors and members of MIT steering committee for their time, dedication, and insights. My many virtuous friends who have accompanied me to this point of celebration. Due to time constraints, I cannot mention every name. You know who you are. I thank you from the bottom of my heart, and it is bottomless today. I return to my ineffable gratitude to His Holiness for the kindness and guidance he has bestowed on the Dalai Lama Center for Ethics and Transformative Values at MIT. Your Holiness, may you be in good health, may you live long, may you continue to catalyze much good for all. Tradition emphasizes repeating anything of importance 3 times. All I experience is tremendous sense of gratitude. So you may hear me repeat this for the next 3 days. I invite you, and I hope to see most of you at the Global Systems Conference tomorrow at MIT, and at the Stages of Meditation, Buddhism for the 21st Century, teaching on Tuesday morning, also at MIT. Thank you again for coming.
You were wonderful.
How were you? That was great. You weren't nervous.
Oh my God, I'm so glad it's over.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
He's going to come to you.
Oh, thank you, thank you.
셰다니.
Thank you.
등장한 레타스.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. And hold them to that stage.
Thank you for coming.
Bring James to this.
This way or that way?
Oh, thank you, thank you.
폴 그만.
Thank you. You clarified a lot of good points.
잘 깨비.
Thank you.
잘 캡창.
Thank you.